This happened a few months ago. I was in a bit of a rut. I decided to take a weekend trip to a small-town motel. I hoped the quiet would help me find some inspiration. The motel was old and a bit run down, but there was a certain charm about it. The peeling wallpaper and flickering neon signs felt cozy. I thought I could clear my mind and get back to design work. On my first night, I settled into my room and started working on my sketches. There was a calmness in the air. I really appreciated that. But everything shifted on my second night. I was in the middle of drawing when I heard a soft tapping against the wall. It was rhythmic and almost soothing. I figured it was my neighbor unwinding after a long day. That made sense, so I brushed it off and tried to concentrate. As the evening wore on, the tapping changed. It became frantic, like someone was scratching at the wall. My heart raced. I froze and listened closely. I felt the vibrations of whatever was on the other side. The bathroom mirror caught my eye. I looked into it, trying to shake off the creeping unease. Then I noticed something odd. Strange symbols were etched into the mirror, almost like a message. I glanced back at the wall, feeling cold fear wash over me. Had those been there before? I couldn't tell. The uncertainty pressed down on me. The next day felt strange too. I swore I saw shadowy figures in my peripheral vision. I told myself it was because I was tired. I had spent hours working. Still, something didn't feel right. What was happening in this motel? Was my neighbor messing with me? I started to question my own sanity. That last night, the scratching became urgent. It pulsed through the room. My heart raced even more, and I felt frozen. I peered through the slightly ajar door, but saw nothing. Only silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. I turned back to the mirror again. The symbols were clearer now. I stepped back, my chest tight. I knew then that I wanted to leave. Just as I decided to run, I heard a quiet whisper. I couldn't make out the words. It felt like someone was right next to me. Panic bubbled inside. I nodded my head, trying to calm down. I took one last look at the symbols before I bolted for my car. I needed to get out of there. Driving away, I had so many questions. What just happened? Were my eyes playing tricks on me? I felt like I had escaped something, but didn't understand it. That weekend changed me, and I can't stop thinking about it. I still wonder what I could have learned from the symbols and whispers. I can't shake the feeling that it was all real. I spent the next few days trying to forget what had happened. I threw myself into work, which helped, but the memories lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that the motel was still in my mind, gnawing at me. Finally, after a week of restless nights, curiosity outweighed my fear. I had to know what those symbols meant. I drove back to the town, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The closer I got, the more anxiety bubbled inside me. Would I find answers or more questions? Just as I approached the motel, I noticed a no vacancy sign hanging on the door. I parked and took a deep breath, summoning the courage to go inside. The lobby was empty, but the receptionist, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, was behind the counter. She glanced up as I entered. "What can I help you with?" she asked, her voice flat. "I want to stay a night. Do you have any rooms available?" I responded, trying to keep my tone casual. She shook her head. "No, we're fully booked. Been real busy lately." "Really? Can you tell me about room 3? I stayed there before." The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Her expression shifted slightly. "Room 3's not available. Not for a long time." "Why not?" I pressed. She hesitated. "It's complicated. You really don't want to know." I could see reluctance in her eyes, but my curiosity pushed me. "I came back because I saw some symbols in the mirror. I want to understand what they meant." "Those symbols," she said, lowering her voice, "they're not meant for everyone. I suggest you leave things be." Those words made me uneasy. I sensed there was more to her warning, but I didn't want to push. Instead, I thanked her and stepped outside. I felt like an outsider in the very place I had wanted to find inspiration. As I walked around, I noticed the motel's exterior more closely. The peeling paint and crooked sign had the same charm, but now it also felt ominous. I decided to take a walk, hoping to clear my head. The sun started to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and red that were beautiful yet eerie. That's when I saw it. A figure in the distance, standing by a tree. It was hard to tell if it was a person or a shadow. I squinted, trying to make it out. My heart raced again. I was already on edge from my last visit, and now this? I rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, the figure was gone. Just the tree stood there, still and silent. I shook my head, brushing it off as a trick of the light. But deep down, the feeling of being watched settled over me. As I made my way back to the car, I felt a growing urgency, like I was being pulled back toward the motel. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. The thought made my skin crawl. Then everything went dark. Just as night fell, the power in the area flickered and went out. No light from the motel sign, no street lamps. I stood still, panic rising again. I realized I didn't know how much time had passed or where I was. The world around me faded into shadows. I felt it, cold breath at my neck. Someone or something was behind me. I turned slowly, my heart hammering. The stillness of the night felt suffocating. I strained my ears for any sound, but there was nothing, just silence. I held my breath, wishing I could make out whatever presence lingered in the darkness. "Hello?" I managed to croak out, my voice barely a whisper. Nothing. I took a shaky step back toward the safety of my car, hoping to escape. But that breath, cold and unsettling, brushed against me again. I could feel the weight of eyes watching, my instincts screaming at me to run. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, I turned and bolted back toward the lobby, fueled by fear. My shoes scuffed against the gravel, the sound echoing in the heavy night air. As I reached the door, I slammed it behind me and leaned against it, gasping for breath. The lobby was dark, barely lit from the slivers of moonlight sneaking in through the dingy windows. I glanced around, but the receptionist was gone, probably retreated to wherever she spent her evenings. My mind raced. I needed to know if I was truly alone, or if something else waited inside. I crept cautiously to the back hallway, the floorboards creaking under my feet. The tight space closed around me as I reached room 3. Just standing there felt wrong, but I had to see. The symbols in the mirror had led me here. What else was I missing? I reached for the doorknob, but it felt extremely hot against my palm. I hesitated, pulling my hand back. There was no logical explanation for this. Panic flared as I remembered the warning from the receptionist. You really don't want to know. But I had to know. Summoning my courage, I opened the door slowly. It creaked ominously. The darkness inside swallowed my light. I hesitated at the threshold, my pulse quickening. I stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind me. My eyes adjusted, and I saw the outline of the room. Everything seemed untouched since my last visit. The old bed, the peeling wallpaper, the mirror hanging crookedly above the dresser. But something wasn't right. When I approached the mirror, I froze. Instead of my reflection, shadows twisted within the glass, shifting like smoke. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step back, but something pulled me closer again. The symbols glowed faintly, illuminating glyphs that morphed and writhed as if alive. I reached a trembling hand toward them, drawn in. Abruptly, the motel's power flickered back on, bathed in blinding light. The shadows retreated into the corners. I stumbled backward, slamming into the dresser. "Who are you?" I uttered, my voice shaky. The moment the words left my mouth, a figure emerged from the dark corner of the room.
It wasn't just a shadow. It was a man. He wore old-fashioned clothing and held an unnerving grin. "I can help you understand," he said softly. I gasped, trying to find my voice. Had I really asked for help, or had I just invited more trouble? My gut churned with dread. The encounter was becoming too real and too terrifying. Then, right at that moment, his smile faltered. Before I could process what was happening, he pointed directly to the mirror, eyes widening. "You shouldn't have touched it." I turned to look, and now the shadows coalesced into something more. A vortex pulling me in. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling, and the door behind me clicked shut, sealing my fate. I felt the room tilt as the vortex threatened to swallow me whole. The air crackled with energy, and the man's voice cut through the chaos. "You mustn't get too close," he shouted, taking a step forward. His clothes rustled in the strange wind swirling around us. But it was too late. The pull intensified. I resisted, limbs heavy and trembling, trying to make sense of everything. "What do you mean?" I stumbled over the words, anxiety rising like bile in my throat. The man's expression shifted into something darker. "The mirror is a gateway, a trap for souls searching for answers. It feeds off your fear, your desire to know." "Then why are you here?" I asked, a mix of anger and confusion flaring in my chest. "If it's so dangerous, why are you in here with me?" He hesitated, the shadows behind him moving restlessly. "I was once like you, curious, reckless. But curiosity comes with a price," he said, his tone somber. I had to think quickly. I needed to escape the pull of the mirror. How do I fight it? He stepped closer, urgency in his eyes. "You must let go of your fear. Only then can you break free." Let go of my fear? How was I supposed to do that? The swirling shadows darkened, and the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices urging me to step closer. Images flashed in the glass, snippets of my life, all my insecurities laid bare. I felt their weight pressing down, threatening to suffocate me. Suddenly, a thought surged through my mind. "You used to be trapped, didn't you? What did you do?" He looked away, shame shadowing his face. I thought I could understand it all. Instead, I lost everything. My home, my life. All I have left is this form, stuck between worlds. Desperation clawed at my throat. "So there's no way out?" He gripped my shoulders, intensity in his eyes. "There is, but it's your choice. You must confront the darkness inside you." Before I could respond, the shadows around me surged forward, tightening their grip. Panic bubbled up, threatening to drown my thoughts. I tried to shake him off, but his grip was like iron. "Fight it!" he yelled, but his words were lost in the growing roar of the vortex. The shadows twisted violently, reaching for me with hunger. I shut my eyes tight, trying to block out the fear and the memories flashing within the mirror. That's when I felt it, a spark of defiance within, a sudden rush of clarity. I opened my eyes, focusing on the man. You're a warning. I won't be like you." He nodded, understanding. "Then break free." Gathering all my strength, I summoned my will. I stepped away from the mirror, the heat from it licking at my skin. The shadows screamed, a chorus of rage and despair, but I didn't look back. I took another step, another, pushing against the weight of my fears. With a final surge, I turned and raced for the door, flinging it open. The room exploded into blinding light. The vortex howled in protest, and behind me, I heard the man shout one last warning, "Don't look back." But I did, and in that moment, I saw everything. The figures that had trapped him, and I knew the truth. He wasn't the only one. I had just unleashed something far worse.
The door slammed shut behind me, leaving me in the silence of the hallway. What had I done? I stumbled into the hallway, trying to shake off the remnants of the chaos I had just escaped. My heart was still racing, each beat a reminder of the darkness I had left behind. I leaned against the cold wall, trying to collect my thoughts. Questions swirled in my head like the shadows I had just faced. What had I unleashed? As I took a deep breath, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air was different now, heavy with a sense that I wasn't alone. My instincts screamed at me to move, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then I heard it. Faint whispers, like the echoes of the shadows, drifting through the corridor. I looked around, half expecting to see the man's worried face or a glimpse of the mirror. There was nothing, just the dim light flickering overhead. I forced myself to step forward, frustration mingling with fear. I needed to find answers. Turning down the hallway, I spotted a door slightly ajar at the end. The whispers grew louder, pulling me closer. What if it's a trap, I thought, but the curiosity was too strong. I pushed the door open, and the creak of the hinges pierced the quiet. Inside, the room was dim. A small table sat in the center, cluttered with dusty books and strange artifacts. My eyes landed on a picture frame resting on the edge, filled with what looked like family photos, but the faces were distorted, as if the images were caught in a constant flicker of despair. I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Who did this? I whispered, memories of the man's warning ringing in my head. Were these trapped souls too? I picked up a dusty book, the title barely legible, and opened it. The pages were filled with scrawled notes and sketches of the mirror, detailing rituals and strange symbols. My hands shook as I turned the pages, a feeling of dread creeping in. Then I saw a sketch of the man from the mirror. His eyes looked back at me with a mixture of anger and warning. "No!" I gasped, dropping the book as realization hit me. He was a victim, a warning written in ink. Just as I noticed the figure beside him, it was me. Shock froze me in place. My likeness was trapped within those pages, tethered to his fate. Suddenly, the air shifted. The whispers escalated into frantic screams, and I spun around to find the door slamming shut. Panic flooded my veins. I was trapped. I ran to the door, wrenching the handle, but it didn't budge. Darkness pooled behind me, and a cold wind swept through the room. That's when I saw it. Shadows creeping along the walls, forming into shapes that resonated with the sketches in the book. They were reaching for me, clawing at the air, drawing closer. I could feel their desperation, their fury. I backed away, heart pounding as I remembered the man's final words. Confront the darkness inside you. I didn't know if I could. I was spiraling into a nightmare, and I had no way of knowing who or what was coming for me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something hidden beneath the table. An old key. My breath caught. Could it lead me out? As the shadows surged forward, I dove for the key, just as the room began to warp around me. The last thing I heard was the whispering chorus screaming my name. Would I escape, or was I doomed to join them? I fumbled in the darkness, my fingers closing around the key. It felt cold and heavy in my palm, anchoring me to the moment. I wasted no time. Shoving the key into the door, I twisted it with shaky hands. Nothing happened. Panic bubbled up inside me. I could hear the shadows closing in, like hungry wolves. The book I dropped earlier lay on the floor, pages fluttering as if caught in a storm. I had to do something before they reached me. Raising the key, I turned to the shadows, facing them head on. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. For a moment, there was silence. It felt eerie, like time had stopped. Then the shadows pulsed, and I was hit with a wave of fear.
They wanted me to feel their pain, their rage. I could almost hear their cries, becoming clearer, peppered with words I couldn't understand. I backed away to the wall, clutching the key like a talisman. I had to break free from this nightmare. Remembering the rituals from the book, I quickly knelt to grab it. I needed more answers. My hands trembled as I turned the pages again, searching for something that could help. I read about a binding spell, a way to confront the darkness without being consumed by it. Speak the words, it instructed, but I had no idea if I could summon that kind of strength. The shadows writhed closer, whispering incoherent truths now. I caught a glimpse of their faces, distorted memories captured in their forms, each one a reflection of fear. They surrounded me, and I realized they were all like the man from the mirror, victims lost to their own darkness. I opened my mouth, trying to find my voice. I needed to say something, anything. I'm not afraid of you, I yelled, but the sound felt weak even to my own ears. I glanced back at the key. Maybe it wasn't just a way out. It could be my lifeline. With a sudden adrenaline rush, I lifted the key high above my head. I will find a way to set you free, I declared, my voice steadier this time. I knew I had to confront the shadows, to acknowledge their pain. It was the only way to break the cycle. The air thickened as I began to recite the words from the book. As each syllable escaped my lips, the shadows faltered. They seemed to hesitate, as if weighing my sincerity. "You are not alone," I shouted, feeling an unexpected surge of courage. The room began to shake, the shadows swirling around me, merging and separating like a dark tide. I could feel their anguish seep into my soul. I closed my eyes and spoke louder. "I free you. I confront what binds you." And then everything went dark. I felt weightless and cold, as if I were falling through an endless void. The frantic whispers turned to screams, echoing louder until they reached a deafening crescendo. Was this what it felt like to confront one's own darkness? I wondered, feeling the chill wrap around me. I braced myself for impact, unsure of what would come next. Then, in an instant, I hit something solid. I opened my eyes to find myself back in the dimly lit room, the shadows gone, but the key still clutched tightly in my hand. I gasped for breath, heart racing. I wasn't free yet. The key felt heavier now, as if it carried the weight of the shadows I had just faced. And deep down, I knew my journey was only beginning. My breath steadied as I rose to my feet, but the room felt somehow different. The shadows had vanished, but an unsettling energy hung in the air. It gnawed at me, whispering that my battle was only just beginning. I needed answers, and I had the key in my hand. The book lay open on the floor, its pages fluttering gently, as if caressed by an unseen breeze. I approached it cautiously, bending down to read the last few lines I had hastily recited. "To confront darkness is to recognize its face," it said. "Only through understanding can you hope to escape." I shivered. Would I have to dive deeper into this nightmare to find the truth? I shook off the thought and grabbed the book, tucking it under my arm. I could still hear the echoes of the shadows in my mind, their mixture of anger and sorrow lingering like a bad taste in my mouth. The memories of their ghostly faces flashed before me, and I couldn't help but wonder who they had been in life. I glanced around the room, looking for a clue, something that could help me process everything I just experienced. A soft glow caught my eye from under the bed. Crouching down, I reached for whatever it was. My fingers brushed against a small, dusty box. I pulled it out and set it down beside me. It was locked. A tiny brass padlock held the box shut, but I wasn't giving up that easily. I took the key that I still held tightly and pressed it to the lock. My heart raced as I realized it fit perfectly.
With a swift turn, I felt the lock give way. The lid creaked open, revealing a deeply faded photograph inside. My stomach sank as I picked it up. The faces in the image were familiar. They were the same distorted nightmares I'd seen in the shadows. In the corner of the photo, someone had scribbled a date, 17 years ago. I squinted at the faces and then back at the room. What did this mean? Who were they? I felt the suffocation of worry tighten around my throat. I needed to know their stories, but the thought of reliving any of that terror made me hesitant. That's when I heard a noise, hard footsteps approaching from the hallway. I froze, adrenaline surging through my veins. In that moment, I was torn between the urge to hide and the need to discover who else might know about these shadows. Before I could make a decision, the door swung open. A tall figure entered, silhouetted against the hallway light. My breath hitched as I looked closer. It was a woman, but her features were shrouded. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice quivering. She stepped forward, and familiarity washed over me. "You shouldn't have released them," she whispered, her eyes locking onto mine. The key slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. My heart raced, a wave of dread crashing over me. Had I really set something free? The shadows were only the beginning. "Tell me what I need to know," I shouted, my voice breaking. But the woman just shook her head. "You need to prepare. They're not finished with you yet." As she spoke, the lights flickered ominously. I could hear the whispers return, echoing through the walls. I felt every shadow converging, closing in around me. Before I could respond, the woman vanished, leaving me alone with the darkness. And I had no idea what came next. The shadows embraced me, but my instincts pushed me to act. I had to get out of there. My breath echoed as I scrambled over the scattered furniture, the photograph still gripped tightly in my hand. I dashed for the door, but hesitation crept in. What if the woman came back? What if something worse awaited me outside? I paused, eyes darting around the room. The book lay on the floor, pages still rustling, as if it were alive. A thought struck me. Maybe it held more secrets. I fought the urge to wait, but I couldn't leave without knowing everything I could. I grabbed the book, cradling it against my chest, and opened it again, desperately searching for more answers. The inked words blurred, but one line caught my eye. "The key to understanding the past is within the ruins of the present." My heart raced. The ruins? What could that mean? It sounded like a clue, a way to figure out what had really happened here. The rumble of footsteps grew louder from the hallway, shaking me from my thoughts. No more delays. I dashed out of the room and into the thinly lit corridor. My pulse drummed in my ears as I glanced left and right, the faded wallpaper closing in around me. Then I spotted it. A door at the far end, a dim light flickering underneath. Against my better judgment, I crept toward it. Something about that light drew me in, an unexplainable urge to uncover whatever lay on the other side. Part of me screamed to turn back, to escape this nightmare instead of diving deeper, but curiosity had a hold on me. When I reached the door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the cold metal knob. I held my breath, anticipating the worst. But when I twisted it and stepped inside, the room before me revealed the unexpected. It looked like a small archive or storage room, rows of boxes and shelves filled with dust-coated items. I scanned the room, trying to make sense of it all. In the corner, a corkboard held old clippings and photos, far too many, resembling the faces from the photograph I'd found. Then everything shifted. The lights began to flicker more violently, and a cold breeze swept through, extinguishing the few remaining bulbs. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating papers scattered across the floor. I bent down, gathering a few. They were articles about mysterious disappearances from the town. Each one dated 17 years ago, all connected to those faces in the photo.
My heart raced as I realized the woman had appeared in some of them, her face clearer in certain images. What had she done? As I read, I felt something cold brush against my shoulder. I jumped and swung the light around. My breath came in short gasps, but there was nothing. A weight settled in my chest. It was the shadows watching me, waiting for their moment. Then a voice broke through the silence. "You shouldn't have come here." I turned to face the door, but no one was there. The chill in the room deepened. I was not alone. And I suddenly understood. The key wasn't just the one I had used to open the box. It was uncovering the truth. But would it cost me everything? I jumped at the voice. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The beam of my flashlight flickered across the room, but nothing moved. The oppressive silence pressed in, making my skin prickle. I took a step back, the cold air still swirling around me, and scanned the archive again. I needed to find answers. The articles I had gathered lay in a disordered pile. I picked them up, noticing one with a headline that stood out: "Missing Woman Found, Unraveling the Mystery." My fingers trembled as I opened it. The article detailed a local woman who had vanished without a trace, details that mirrored my own findings. It felt surreal. I glanced up, half expecting to see her standing there, but only shadows met my gaze. I had to keep reading. Something told me this was important. The next article was stamped with a yellowing date, coinciding with the others. My heart sank when I realized it covered a case from the same year, detailing how several people had gone missing within weeks. Their photos blurred together, faces hauntingly familiar. And then I saw her again, the woman from my photograph, her eyes piercing through the ink. The sense of dread deepened as I pieced together fragments. They all vanished near the old ruins on the outskirts of town. Were those the very ruins from the book? I was so focused, my mind racing, that I didn't notice the shadows shifting until it was too late. A sudden movement caught my eye. On the corkboard, an old photo shifted and fell to the floor, the glass frame cracking. I gasped and took a step back. The image. I knelt down, picking it up. It showed a group of people standing in front of a dilapidated building, the same one from my photograph. "Get out," the voice echoed again, now more urgent, as if something were trying to warn me. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. Adrenaline surged through me, and I dropped the photo. I need to know," I stammered to the empty air. My hands were shaking, the fear creeping in like a dark fog. But I couldn't just leave now. I needed to connect the dots. The room felt like it was closing in. I had to escape, but I couldn't shake the fear that would follow me. Something compelled me to look one last time at the corkboard. And there it was again, a new piece of paper hastily tacked up in the corner. Unexpectedly, it was a recent article with a headline that chilled me to the bone. "Local woman disappears again. Years later, history repeats itself." I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just a past mystery, it was ongoing. I was standing in the heart of something dark and haunting. I had to leave before it settled around me completely. I sprinted toward the door, but as I turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. My breath quickened, panic rising within me. I pushed harder, but it felt as if something was holding it shut. The shadows pivoted, pressing closer, and I heard whispers, almost like taunts, echoing in my ears. "Leave while you can." I needed to break free. Just then, I felt a hand clasp over my wrist, cold and unyielding. I yanked back in horror, the flashlight beam flickering as I struggled. I glanced back to see the outline of a figure emerging, its face obscured but unmistakably familiar. It was her. I was trapped. My heart thudded violently against my chest as the figure stepped closer, its presence suffocating. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered, her voice a chilling echo of the warnings I had heard before. I tried to pull away, but her grip was firm, binding me to that spot. My instinct screamed at me to run, yet every nerve in my body was locked in place, struck by fear. "Let go of me!" I shouted, forcing the words out despite the panic constricting my throat. But she didn't respond. Instead, her expression softened for a moment, as if she was trying to convey something, to share the weight of her burdens with me. But all I could see were the shadows swirling like hungry tendrils at her feet. Desperation clawed at me, urging me to fight against the fear. "What do you want?" I gasped, my eyes darting to the door, still locked tight against my escape. Her lips parted slightly, and the whispers that surrounded us swelled, frantic, pleading. "To save them," she whispered, her eyes glistening with an urgency. "You must find the ruins." The ruins? A confusing rush of thoughts crashed through my mind, fragments of articles I had read flickering in my memory. They were linked somehow, a path to the truth that could set everything right. I didn't know exactly how, but something deep down compelled me to listen. "Yes, but it's dangerous. You can't let them take you," she urged, her voice rising above the cacophony of whispers. "You're fragile, one curiosity too far, and they'll trap you as they did me." The gravity of her words hit me, and I found my voice again. "There has to be a way out," I pleaded, meeting her gaze. "You're here. You must know how to break this, how to stop them." But just as her grip seemed to loosen, a wild rush of shadows conjured around us.
I felt that suffocating pull again. "You are stronger than you know," she urged, and I heard a hint of encouragement in her tone. "You have the key. Use it, choose your path, and don't look back." With a sudden rush of clarity, I turned my focus to the key resting in my palm, the key that felt heavy with the weight of countless stories and unfulfilled promises. I drew in a deep breath, summoning every ounce of will within me. "You don't control me," I shouted into the void, wrapping my fingers tightly around the key, intent on confronting the shadows that sought to bind me. In that instant, the darkness seemed to waver, something flaring between us like a boundary line drawn in the sand. In a single motion, I raised the key and shouted out loud, "I will find the truth. I will confront this darkness." The shadows recoiled, a rush of energy swirling around me. They hissed and thrummed with fury, but I held my ground. "I will not be another face in your collection. I am not afraid," I declared, and as the words left my mouth, the shadows writhed in a frenzied display of anger, the mist surrounding the woman dissipating into nothingness. "Go!" she cried out, just before vanishing completely. "Now!" That moment of distraction was all I needed. I lunged for the door. The knob turned easily this time, and I burst through, leaving the chaos behind me. I stumbled back into the hall, a different hall, tinged with an eerie light. The silence pressed in, but I didn't stop. I had a direction now, a destination, the ruins. In the back of my mind, that shadowy figure lingered as a warning, but I wouldn't let fear dictate my choices any longer. Bolting for the exit, I navigated through the dim, familiar corridors of the motel. Every step felt lighter than the last, but as I reached the door, a sudden chill swept through the air behind me. I hesitated, glancing back. I saw faint silhouettes looming in the shadows, faces twisted in grief and anger. A sense of urgency clawed at my lungs. I bolted through the doorway and into the night, the moonlight spilling over me like a blanket of clarity. Outside, I paused to catch my breath, heart racing. The chill in the air carried whispers away, but I knew they would not linger far. My stomach knotted at the thought of those spirits seeking me. The car sat waiting, but I didn't climb in just yet. My gaze drifted toward the path leading to the edge of the town, where the ruins lay hidden, a relic of pain and secrets. The signs all pointed toward it. Determined, I took a deep breath. I'd go back. I'd find out what had happened, and I'd confront whatever lay within the ruins. But even as I made my way towards that destination, a lingering uncertainty clung to me. Would the truth set me free, or
would it bind me like so many before? The shadows would always be there. Their whispers would remain, unanswered in the silence of night. I would face the darkness, but I could not escape the feeling that it was only just beginning. With one last glance at the motel behind me, I forged ahead into the unknown.